Hello everyone and welcome back to Very Cold Lasagna, your filthy casual place for all the filthy casual takes on the world of sports. I am DylanLasagna and welcome back to another preview, a weekly preview of my San Francisco 49ers as they get ready to head to Las Vegas, either to party or not to party on a New Year's night, day, whatever you want to, a New Year's weekend for a matchup with the Las Vegas Raiders in a New Year's Week 17 battle. So, yeah, they're playing the Raiders in Week 17, New Year's Day, on an afternoon. So, depending on your definition of it, it should be exciting for some, not so much for others, because, just looking at the direction of both of these teams, it may vary by mileage. And why do I say that? Well, look, when the schedule came out in May, this seemed primed for a really interesting matchup on New Year's Day. You know, you had Trey Lance and these weapons around him going up against Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, Chandler Jones, all these two offenses, and as well as a strong two strong solid defenses, at least on paper at the time when the schedule came out in May, going at each other, down each other's throats with two loyal fan bases, Raider Nation, the faithful. Those two fan bases that honestly have been going at each other's throats, at least until the Niners whooped the Raiders out of the Bay Area in their last meeting in 2018. Yeah, remember Big Dick Nick Mullins? Yeah, whooping the Raiders' candy asses. Oh man, the dark days. But anyway, yeah, it seemed on paper that this matchup was going to be enticing back in May. Now, at least for the Raiders front, not so much. Obviously, we know where things stand with my 49ers. They recently came off another big win against the Washington Commanders, despite some initial first half trouble. But they got the job done. Got some big splash plays into Brock Purdy and George Kittle. They combined for two big touchdowns. And the defense made some big turnovers on Taylor Heineke, who would get benched for Carson Wentz. But all in all, the 49ers went on to win 37-20. And honestly, eventually a good second half performance from them. Kept them in position with the Minnesota Vikings for the NFC's second seed. And for Washington, even more pressure on them to maintain that last wildcard spot. Meanwhile, for the Raiders, it has not been a good season for them. Honestly, a very disappointing follow-up to what has been last season, a inspiring one. You'd think that this season, with Josh McDaniels coming in, Devontae Adams being added, Chandler Jones, all these pieces being added to what followed up an inspiring run in 2021 with Rich Bisaccia leading a late push to give Derek Carr his first ever playoff game, and fighting until the end with the Cincinnati Bengals. It's been very disappointing. It has been very disappointing for the Raiders. They're up to the point of 6-9. Derek Carr in the last month has been very bad. He has been very conservative with the ball, too safe with it. He leads the league in interceptions with 14. And Saturday's Christmas Eve night against the Steelers was kind of an indictment on how bad he has been in the last month or so. Throwing two bad interceptions, including the one to seal the deal for the Raiders. And yeah, it was just not a good performance for Derek Carr in that offense. Now, granted, it's not entirely his fault per se, but he's a huge part of it. And they had that huge lead on the Steelers in what was honestly a pretty offensively inept game. But the Steelers found that magic in them to come back in that game on the night they were honoring their running back Franco Harris. On the night they were honoring the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, they rallied back. They took a late lead to beat the Raiders 13-10, and now all of a sudden, whatever playoff hopes the Raiders had left is on life support. One last loss out the window. is going to put them out the window. And it seems like Josh McDaniels is already going to focus. It's just going to focus on the offseason. It seems like he's absolutely has no interest in trying to make a backdoor entrance into the playoffs just to get smashed by the number 2 seed. And you honestly can't blame him for it. No matter how hard they want to fight in these last 2 games, because he initially teased about making a quarterback change, and he made that official on Wednesday because Derek Carr has officially been benched. Yes, he's been officially benched for Jarrett Stidham. Yeah, who's Jarrett Stidham? Well, actually, Josh McDaniels was his third string guy when the two were in New England. So they do have a little bit of history with each other. And we only had like a minute worth of highlights in the preseason. So the Niners are kind of coming in at a little bit of a disadvantage. Just like, with other teams, with like the Bucks and the Dolphins and the Seahawks, like when they were facing Brock Purdy. So the roles are a little reversed here. So either way, it seems like the time for Derek Carr is coming to an end for the Raiders. And I think both sides are looking for a fresh start, because for the Raiders, they could save a crap ton of money, even though they signed him to like a more team-friendly extension last offseason. They could get out of it. They could save a crap ton of money. I believe it's like 30 to 40 million. If they trade or release him like right after the Super Bowl, or like by the Super Bowl. Correct me on that, please. But it seems like they're ready for a fresh start. They're ready for a fresh quarterback, whether it's in the draft or in free agency. They definitely do need a fresh start because Derek Carr, it seems it's finally time to move on from him. Like he's from the way he presents himself, he's a really good guy. I like how he presents himself, but it's just time to move on from him. So anyway, Josh McDaniels benches Derek Carr. Backup Jarrett Stidham's going to play the final 2 games of the season. Derek Carr is actually inactive. He's like the third string guy, so he's probably not going to be there at all on game day on Sunday nor in week 18 when they play the Chiefs. So yeah, that's kind of a bummer if you're a Raiders fan. So I guess, yeah, you got to look towards the future. But if you're a Niners fan, or if you're the Niners in general, you still can't overlook this game just because Josh McDaniels shut down Derek Carr for the season. You still got a game to look forward to because, well, you have something to play for. You still have something at stake. You still got to play for that number 2 seed just in case the Minnesota Vikings screw up. They slip up. They have an important game on their hands against the Green Bay Packers in their last 2 road games of the season, which starts in Lambeau Field. All of a sudden, yeah, stubborn-ass Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, for as sloppy as they've been most of the year, they're finally putting it together, I guess. And they're trying to make one last push and get some help to get to backdoor into the playoffs. And for as sloppy as that offense has been in Green Bay, the Vikings defense remains the Achilles heel for Minnesota. So this could potentially be another tight game for the Vikings. And yes, the Niners do have to take care of their business, but obviously they'll be paying real close attention to how things pan out between the Vikings and the Packers, because just one loss will put the Niners up over Minnesota as the number 2 seed. And obviously the Niners will be strengthening that hold once they get a hold of it. So going into this game between the Niners and the Raiders, the injury report's pretty light, but we got some positive injury news if you're the Niners. So Kyle Shanahan recently came out throughout the week, talking about Deebo Samuel, talking about Elijah Mitchell, talking about Kevin Givens, who have been out with injuries. Starting with Deebo Samuel, it seems like he's on track to return to practice late this week. Again, by the time I'm talking about this, it's on a Wednesday. This is coming out when they've already practiced on a Friday. So when this uploads, so there probably already has been stuff talked about. So forgive me on that. It's a busy week for me. And, I do stuff outside of this, all right? So anyway, Deebo Samuel, who has been out with the ankle and MCL sprains, it seems like he's going to be coming back to practice. He's probably already practicing, if I'm not wrong on that. And he could suit up back as soon as next week, week 18 against the Arizona Cardinals, get some reps in for the playoff push. We'll see. It'll be a big addition to the Niners' already loaded offense. Running back Elijah Mitchell looks on track to have his injured reserve practice window open after missing about a month with the MCL sprain. So looks like the running back depth is going to be boosted up again with McCaffrey and Jordan Mason. So we'll see how that goes. Kevin Givens, their defensive lineman, seems to be progressing well too with his knee injury. Kyle Shanahan mentioned he could make a return in the playoffs as soon as the first round game for the 49ers. And in terms of this week, Kerry Hyder Jr. returned to practice after missing the Christmas Eve game with an ankle injury. So other than that, it's been a pretty relatively light injury report for the 49ers, unless later on something pops up. Meanwhile, for the Raiders, it's also just as light. Rock Racine, their corner, returned to practice as well after missing the Steelers game with a knee injury. Unfortunately, they lost their top two defenders in linebackers Chandler Jones and Denzel Perryman, who went on season-ending injury reserve with serious injuries. Jones with an elbow injury, Perryman with a shoulder injury. So, yeah, that's big losses in their pass rush and in their coverage. Jones was a big factor in the pass rush along with Max Crosby, especially in the last month. He finally caught fire, and he was a big factor in the win against the Patriots a couple weeks ago. Perryman was also a big factor in the secondary with leading the team in tackles. So, yeah, losing those guys, even though it's way towards the end of the season, it's just always a big loss. Obviously, Derek Carr not practicing because, well, you know why. He knows what's going to happen. He's gone. So we all know what's going to happen with Derek Carr. Some players to watch for this game between the Niners and the Raiders. We're mostly going to focus on defense for the 49ers, at least in my opinion. Jimmy Ward, he had a really good game against the Commanders. He had a pick on Taylor Heineke that got him benched. I would like to see some more production from him as well going into this game against the Raiders. Obviously, you don't have too much film on Jarrett Stidham, but you would try to make him as uncomfortable as possible by, going around seeking man-to-man or just swarming around the receivers in the secondary. Defensive lineman Eric Armstead, he has been a force quietly in the pass rush in the inside since he's come back, generating a lot of pressure, inside pressure, and it looks like it's going to continue this Sunday with a weaker Raiders offensive line. And I would like to see Brandon Ayuk factored back in. Sure, he had a nice catch in the very first play on offense on Christmas Eve Saturday. I just hope that what's the name? Purdy can factor him in a little more on offense. So hopefully this will be the game that gets him back into the swing of things. For the Raiders, obviously, it's quarterback Jarrett Stidham. We don't really know too much about Jarrett Stidham. When you look at some of his highlights, it seems like when the offensive line gives him enough time to throw, he seems like a really good check down quarterback, and then he throws a solid mid-range ball. So it's gonna be one of those things for the Raiders. It's like, could this be our guy, at least as a high-end backup, or could it be a starter until whatever we get in the draft is ready to go? So it's gonna be an interesting evaluation for Stidham this Sunday. Obviously, you gotta watch for Max Crosby, and the X factor here is Hunter Renfrow. We all know how good Devontae Adams is. Even if the quarterback change is gonna hurt Devontae Adams a bit, Hunter Renfrow, a good slot receiver in the middle, so you always gotta watch out for him. Obviously, you cannot treat this game as a whatever game for the 49ers with Derek Carr now inactive. So you have to be careful for the 49ers because this could be a potential trap game. So when you look at the keys to victory for this game for San Francisco, you cannot give Jarrett Stidham time to throw. Like I said, countless times, there isn't much tape on this guy. But one thing that the 49ers can often count is pressuring the quarterback, finding weak glaring holes in the Raiders' offensive line, and finding a way to get to Jarrett Stidham. Because if you don't, then Jarrett Stidham is going to have ample time to throw if there's no pass rush. So the Niners got to bring that heat on Jarrett to force him out of the pocket and contain him, swarm him into mistakes, into sacks, into turnovers. Obviously, the biggest part of their offense is Josh Jacobs. The Niners' run defense has been pretty good for the most part this season. So Josh Jacobs was pretty quiet on Saturday against the Steelers. So we never know any given Sunday, but just find a way to shut down and contain Jacobs in both the running game and the receiving game, and simply just avoid any serious injuries in Vegas. Like, we can't handle anymore. We can't handle any more serious injuries this close to the postseason. For the Raiders, if you're looking for any type of upset, just help out Max Crosby. Just help out Max Crosby pressure Brock Purdy. You lost Chandler Jones, so you basically don't have any more pass rushing help. So it's basically the one man show with Crosby. So whoever's there has got to help him out. You can't let George Kittle go uncovered in the receiving game because George Kittle has been playing well this last month or so. So if they're going with Kittle, you can't, if you're covering Ayuk or Jennings or McCaffrey, if they're all covering, you got to find a way to go man to man with Kittle in the receiving game. And since Stidham is at quarterback, Josh McDaniels just got to simplify things. You worked with him when you were both with the Patriots. So Josh has an idea about how Jarrett Stidham works, what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are. I mean, sure, he hasn't worked him as well as much as with like Brady or Cam Newton or Mac Jones, but the two spent time with each other. Like in preseason, or like I think in those couple of games where Stidham had to replace Cam Newton during the pandemic season. So Josh has to play to the strengths and simplify things for Jarrett Stidham for a chance to upset the 49ers, if there's any chance to. So the Niners cannot treat this game as, oh, let's go and get this easy W. No, they have to take care of their business here. They have to go out and swing, hit the home runners often against the Raiders team that's just already looking towards the offseason. They're not trying to get that playoff berth unless they're really that desperate. And they can't have that New Year's, the Niners cannot have that New Year's hangover. They cannot let that get to them. So I'm going with the Niners here, but yeah, be careful of that trap. Just be careful of the trap. The Niners can easily win this, but they can also just as easily as screw this up. So it should be an interesting New Year's matchup on New Year's Day. So whether we're Niners faithful or for the remaining Raider Nation that's there in the last 2 weeks of the season, should be a mildly interesting one. So anyway, this is Dylan Lasagna of Very Cold Lasagna, and keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge with your takes on the world of sports. And well, this is the last, unless I upload something on the very last day of 2022. This is the last video of 2022 here on Very Cold Lasagna. And I just want to say Happy New Year. Thank you for subscribing and showing all your support here towards Very Cold Lasagna. And keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge. Your takes on the world of sports. And see you on the other side in 2023. And until next time, until we reach January 1st, peace out.